Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Helping Your Child Make Friends and Supporting Their Social Development. This webinar has been funded by the Government of Alberta, and in association with Can Learn Society, we're here to provide free webinars once a month until the end of December to help support those families who have been impacted by COVID-19. Our hope is to pick a topic every month and to create a community where we can share resources and help support one another as we go through this challenging time. A quick outline on what we will discuss today. First, we'll talk a little bit about Can Learn Society, who we are and what we do. We'll discuss some different programs that are available, and I'll introduce myself as well and tell you a little bit about my personal and professional experience. Next, we'll talk about social emotional learning and the model that it's based on. And for the majority of this webinar, we'll be focusing on practical tips and tricks and different ways to help teach and support your child's social development and ways that they can make and maintain friendships. Finally, we'll discuss a couple of community resources, some websites, some books, and even some groups that you can enroll in that can help support you and your child as well through developing healthy friendships. For those of you who have attended our previous webinar, you're already familiar with Can Learn Society. And for those of you who are new, welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about us. Can Learn Society is a non-for-profit organization, and it was established by parents, just like yourself, who saw that their kids were struggling at school and wanted to help support them. And we've really blossomed and grown through there. We offer a number of different services at Can Learn. We have psychologists and pediatricians at hand, so we offer psychoed assessments. We have some ADHD coaching through a professional facilitator. We have some adult literacy support groups, family literacy support groups. We also provide social skills groups for schools and individuals as well. And one of the great things about Can Learn is a lot of our programs are funded, which means for families who might not be able to afford these services, there is an option of receiving some funding to cover that as well. So we're here to help support you and your family in the best way that we can. I highly recommend you have a look at our website to get some additional information if anything I said was of interest of you. We also have some support groups who were established while we were creating these webinars to really help support one another through this. So if this specifically is a topic that you're interested in, I recommend that you go to our website and enroll in these support groups. They are completely free, and what they are is they discuss more in depth about the topic and help kind of answer some more personal questions that you may have. A little bit about myself. My name's Catherine. I'm a provisional psychologist, which means I'm a psychologist in training. I'm collecting my hours to become a registered psychologist. Everything that I do is under supervision of two wonderful registered psychologists at Can Learn Society, and Dr. Ann Price and Krista Forand. And I've been with Can Learn for 4.5 years, and I've specifically been focusing on social skills, teaching families and kids social skills. So this is an area I'm super passionate about, and I'm hoping I can teach you a couple of things that I've learned as I've worked through different families. So before we dive into social development and building friendships, it's important to understand where all of this stems from. So when we talk about social emotional learning, there's some really great definitions out there. I like to talk about it is how we deal with everyday life. So when you've waken up and you've had just a really rough night, maybe you haven't had enough sleep, maybe there's something going on, but you still have to go to school, you still have to go to work, you have to interact with people around you. When the person who you're partnering with, whether it's academically at school or maybe even your spouse, when you have to work together as a team, but you really don't agree with their ideas, what do you do? Or when there's a problem, how can you communicate that and come to a solution? So the most updated model for social emotional learning is the CASEL model, which explains that there's 5 really important things that you need for social and emotional learning. The first one is self-awareness. So I talk about this a lot if you've heard my other webinars, but if you aren't aware of a problem or you aren't aware of yourself, you can't fix or change anything. If I have no idea how a phone works and you said, Catherine, the battery is running low here, can you fix it and change it? I might end up making it worse. The same happens for adults and kids. If we aren't aware of ourselves, our emotions, our reactions, how we deal in different situations, well, we can't take that step forward in improving and changing. I need to be aware that when I'm frustrated, these are my triggers, and I don't end up making the best decision or choice. I need to know when I'm upset, what does my body need? Do I need time alone or do I need to be with friends? And I need to understand the ways that my body shows me when I'm dealing with those different emotions as well. Once we've started developing self-awareness, that's where self-management comes in. So I'm aware when I'm feeling frustrated, it's typically, when something unexpected happens. So I know that's my trigger. I'm also aware that during this time, that's where I need some alone time. So I'm able to understand what my body needs and manage that so I can be my best self. After that, we have responsible decision making, which means now that I'm aware of my emotions, I'm aware on how to manage them. This is where I can make the best decision possible for a problem. I can look at all of my options and think clearly. I can't do that if I'm feeling frustrated and angry and I haven't managed it. And I definitely can't do that if I'm not even aware that I'm feeling frustrated and angry and I'm just trying to make a decision to get it out of the way. Now, these 3 are quite internal. The last 2 are when we notice things get a bit external, which means it starts involving the people around us. And these are the 2 that we really want to focus on for today. So the first one is relationship skills, which means understanding relationship. What does a healthy versus unhealthy relationship look like? What a relationship with your friend versus your mom versus the teacher, how those are all different and have different dynamics. And the last one is social awareness, which is a super strong one. So do I know what my friend needs when they're feeling frustrated or sad? Can I empathize with them? Can I take their perspective? Do I realize if they're going through a hard time and they don't want to play, that has nothing to do with me, but that just means that they're going through something and I need to be there to support them? When we put all 5 of these together, that is when we have a well-rounded individual, whether it's a child or an adult, who is able to regulate their emotions, deal with unexpected change, problem solve, and maintain their relationship around them. And this is something that we hope to foster in our kids, and that's what we're going to be talking about through the next couple of slides. Now, it's important that we discuss the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19, before we talk about all this great social skills. Because COVID-19 has added this extra challenging layer when it comes to interactions. Now we're social distancing. Some of us are learning at home. Some of us have been on and off from online school to homeschool to in-person school, and it's getting quite exhausting. And some of us, our kids haven't seen their friends in a really long time. Peer interaction is key. It is important, and it's something that helps develop a lot of great skills. It helps foster great conversations. It helps you understand different group dynamics. It even helps you understand bias and try to get different perspective or reduce prejudice. It helps also with anxiety when you're able to understand and spend time with people around you. It increases cooperation, which is a foundation for so many of us who are now working adults. And you might think of 1 or 2 coworkers who might not have this quite yet. And it increases problem-solving skills. Peer interaction is so important, and COVID-19 has had a huge hit on that. Research has actually shown that because we haven't had much social interaction, both kids and adults, their social skills have been reduced. Social skills is just like any other skills. If you use it regularly, you strengthen it. But if you haven't used it in a while, you can forget some of the basic things. And this is one thing we need to be aware of So remember when we talked about self-awareness, we need to be aware of how this year has really impacted and changed us, but also our families and our kids. What's been going on with them? And I want you to think about this as we talk about the next couple of slides, because you might realize, you know what, my child really, the area that he struggled with or she struggled with the most is cooperation. That's where I noticed it went really downhill. And for others, you might say it's conversation. So every family is different. So understanding where your child's struggles are is going to help you know on what you need to focus to help get them to build that skill that they had before, or maybe they never did, but helping foster and create that foundation for them as well. So the good news about social skills is just like we can teach someone to ride a bike or to read, we can also teach individuals social skills, which is a really great thing. For some people, they are born with it naturally. For others, this is a struggle, and that's totally okay. As a parent, as a teacher, as a supporting adult, there's one phrase I really want you to stick and remember when it comes to teaching this. Common sense isn't so common. I really need you to remember this as you're going through the ups and downs with your child. There are going to be days where you are going to be really frustrated and annoyed and just like overwhelmed with all the different problems that your child's going to bring up. And you're going to say, well, this isn't a big deal, or why don't you just say this? Or obviously you should just do this. But kids and some adults don't have this in their back pocket. A lot of times we throw the word should. You should be able to do this. You're 10 years old. You should know how to ask for help. You should be able to be kinder to your friends and to listen when they have a problem. But throwing the word should doesn't solve anything, does it? In fact, it just causes more frustration for us and guilt and shame for our children who are aware that they should be better at this, but it's hard. So when it comes to teaching these different skills, we need to go back to basics. And for things that for some of us seem super duper common, these are things we need to explicitly teach step by step to get that foundation with our children. This is going to take repetition. This is going to take patience. It's not always going to be perfect, and that's okay. When we realize that our children have gone through a very different era than we have, they've gone through a period of COVID-19 that's really impacted their interaction with their social peers and their learning, that's when we need to build that empathy for them and realize that, yes, maybe this is common for me, but I have way more experience than they do, and I've gone through a different time. So let me teach my child the skills that we can develop it together and we can learn and see what we need to do next. So, starting at the basics. Well, we're talking about friendships. We want to build those relationships. Does your child know what a healthy friendship looks like? Remember when we talked about model a couple slides ago? One of the key factors of a model was relationship skills. And sometimes kids aren't aware of what healthy and unhealthy relationships are. And in fact, I bet some of you have been in a situation where you've had a friendship or a relationship and you didn't even realize it was toxic until what you feel it went too long. So we need to start explaining to our kids what a healthy friendship looks like. I think this is such an important foundation because yes, a kid can tell you some basics like a good friend should listen and they should always be there, but we need to weave in some more layers into this discussion. So make this a fun activity. Get a poster. If you have more than one child, make this a family activity. This is a great way to get their brains thinking. And on the poster, say, we're going to design the perfect friend. It's almost like we're creating them. And we want to know, what should a perfect friend have? And get them to talk about, using the word healthy too. Well, we want our friendship to be a healthy friendship. That's what a perfect friend should look like. So what is a healthy friendship? And get them to think of what the difference is between healthy and unhealthy. For those of you who kids might struggle with this, Even getting a table, and when you write down your perfect friend on one side, on the opposite, write what the unhealthy friend would do. So think of the complete opposite. Now, you're going to get the basics. A good friend should listen, they should ask, they should respect, but we can go even deeper in this. Some questions that I like to ask kids are, okay, is it okay for a friend to be friends with other people? Sometimes kids can get very protective of their friends. They only want to spend time with them. And sometimes they might make you feel guilty for spending time with others. So, ooh, is that healthy or unhealthy? Other questions to get them thinking. Do you need to spend all your time with your friend? What happens if you get in a fight? Do you need to solve it right away? Sometimes kids think friends should never ever fight, and that's something we want to clarify. You'd be surprised, but a lot of kids don't realize in healthy friendships there are natural fights, and that's a good conversation to have. Fights are normal. Okay, what do we do when we get in a fight? Well, it's important to give them space. It's important to talk about it. It's important to listen. And here's a big one I talk about. Apologize and take responsibility. We want a friend, and we want to be that friend as well, who realizes when we make our own mistakes. Again, going back to that self-awareness. If I make a mistake, I say I'm sorry, and I accept that it's my responsibility. If we're an individual who apologizes and then uses a bunch of excuses, that might not be a best apology, and that's a great thing to talk about with your child. So what does that good apology look like? So things like, well, I'm sorry, but if you didn't say this, I would have gotten so frustrated. That's not taking responsibility. That's blaming. And that really can upset a friend and take away from the apology. So discussing that. But also discussing, okay, well, a friend should apologize. They should take responsibility. They should be understanding as well. What about if a friend isn't honest or is kind of back and forth, wishy-washy? So some days they're our best friends, some days they're not. How do we have that conversation with our kids? Well, one important thing that I like to talk about is that there's no such thing as a perfect friend, is there? There are days where I have bad days. There are days when you're going to have bad days. And so I ask kids, hey, when you have a bad day, do you feel like you do your best thinking? Nah. Do you feel like, you say all the right things, or sometimes do you say things you regret? Yikes, me too. So normalize it. Yeah, me too. Do you think that's normal? Yeah, everyone has good days and bad days. But what makes something a healthy friendship is when I have those bad days, I know that maybe I need to give my friend some space because I don't want to say something I don't mean. If I say something I don't mean, I want to apologize and own up. And if my friend says something they don't mean as well, and it's something small, I want to be understanding about that. It's normal for sometimes our friends to go from the healthy and do something a little bit unhealthy. That's normal. But if you find that the majority of your time is being spent in the unhealthy section, that's a warning label. That's a red flag to me. So if every time my friend and I get in a fight, they blame me, okay, that's kind of frustrating. And now they are pretending to be my friend, but then behind my back they say other things. Yikes, that's another red flag. That's a pretty big one. And when I try to talk to them, they say, yeah, whatever, but then they go and they do it again. Ugh. Well, now those are a couple of red flags that are telling me my friend is spending most of their time in the unhealthy section. And that's a little bit of a warning for me that maybe this isn't quite the friendship I'm looking for. And as hard as it may be, sometimes that means I might need to give my friend extra space. Sometimes that means that maybe I'll hang out with somebody else. And it's a big, mature decision to make. It doesn't mean we're rude to that person or we're being unkind. It just means we're also taking care of ourselves. Now, when I do this activity with kids, they really focus on how other people can be a perfect friend for them. And you want to make sure when you're having this conversation, we're focusing on how I can be a good friend to others. Because in the end, there's one person I can control, and that's myself. As much as I would love everyone around me to be a perfect friend, that's really not going to happen. So I have to take a step back and think, what can I do to be a friend to support others? Next, going back to basics means talking about conversation skills. Some kids, this comes so naturally, you might not even need to go in depth in it. For others, this needs to be taught step by step. So explaining, what is a conversation? Oh, it's a conversation is when you have a talk with someone or with a group about a specific topic. Cool, that's a really good explanation of a conversation. Okay, now what do I use for a conversation? Well, your words, you need to talk. Awesome, is there anything else? Like, does anything else help with a conversation? Oh, our body too. So getting them to kind of think what's involved. I like to ask kids, have you ever had a really awkward conversation before? I think that really gets their brain thinking. So it was really quiet. You didn't know what to say. You kind of just wanted to walk out there. And it just was some really long pauses. It felt uncomfortable. And have you ever had a good conversation before where you didn't even realize that you were chatting with this person for quite a while and the topic was super interesting and it kept going? Well, there's difference, isn't there, between good conversations and awkward ones. And in a friendship, one thing that's important is to keep the conversation going. So talking about important things for a good conversation. This doesn't mean it's going to make our conversation go automatically to be the best one ever, but this does mean that it can help support it to slowly shift from awkward to a little bit better. So I talk about 5 things that are important for a good conversation. The first 2 involve our body. So number 1, give eye contact. Number 2, turn your body. If you want to teach this in a really fun way, tell your child, I'm going to have a conversation with you, but I'm going to do some funny things. And at one time, just talk to them and give them your back. Or at one time, talk to them and just look at the ceiling and see if they can figure out what made that conversation awkward. Now, it's important to also make sure that there's some flexibility in this understanding, because some kids say, well, you have to have your full body looking at me the whole time. And we want to explain to kids that doesn't always have to be so black and white. Your body can be a little bit shifted here or there, but as long as you're able to see the person, they're able to see most of your body, it should be good. Eye contact. Sometimes we can't give eye contact, like if someone is driving or if you're having a conversation while playing a video game. That doesn't always work. Majority of the time, eye contact is important, but it doesn't always have to be there for a good conversation. And we want to make sure it's okay if you look away or blink. You don't have to stare the whole time and give solid eye contact, because that can be a little uncomfortable too. So we talk about the 2 things that we can do with our body. The next 3 things for important conversation are things we can do with our words. So the first one is to stay on topic. It can be super confusing if you're jumping around conversations, and especially if someone's trying to talk to you about something important, but you want to talk about hot dogs. Well, that doesn't really feel like you're doing your best listening. I don't really want to have this conversation. You can talk about how conversations can move naturally. So things like, oh, I went on vacation and we had some really yummy food and I ended up going to this restaurant. Have you ever been there? That's a natural flowing conversation. But things going from a hot dog to roller coaster to movies, that can be a little hard to follow. So it's important for you to stay on topic. The next one is my favorite one. Questions. Man, oh man, kids are so funny when it comes to conversations. They forget to ask a question. And this gets really funny sometimes, because if you don't have questions, the conversation ends, and it can't just be one person giving a question. So if you have a child who kind of gets stuck, doesn't know what questions to ask, the trick that I like to use is the who, what, where, when, why, and sometimes how. That's a really great way to get a conversation rolling and think about different questions. And this is something that needs practice. Just like we practice reading, we need to practice our questions as well. So you pick a topic. Favorite vacation. Who did you go with? What was the weather like? Where did you go? When did you go? Why did you love it so much? Things like that can help get the conversation going. And the last point is something a little bit more advanced, but it's important to also make comments to show the person that you're listening. So a question is where you're asking for information. A comment is where you're giving information. So things like, oh, me too. I love that. That's so cool. That really adds to your conversation skills and brings it up a next level. So these are things that you can talk about with your child and getting them to help build those relationships and those conversations. So we've talked about our foundation, our understanding of healthy friendships, having those conversations. Let's talk about our actions next. This is a topic I absolutely love, and it's called expected behavior. Expected behavior is a fancy way of saying how we should act or what the rules are in different environments. The reason why I love using expected behavior is because when we say things like that's appropriate, that's inappropriate, we're putting a negative or positive connotation on an action. And our actions can change depending on where we are. So running is totally okay outside, but it's not expected in the house. That doesn't mean running is a negative or bad thing. It just means there's a time and place for it. And this is something that we want to teach kids, and we want to use this language, expected behavior. So I'm going to give you a bit of an example, and we'll talk about some different points when it comes to teaching about expected behaviors. So when it comes to teaching expected behavior, I like to use a very basic and clear examples for kids to start off. So the library versus the gym. So I kind of start off this conversation like this. So if I'm in the library, what are some things that you expect from me? What are some things I should be doing? Most kids say you should read your book, you should walk in the library, you respect the book, you return it when it's done, you should be quiet and not make a lot of noise. I say, that's awesome. What great expected behaviors. Now, what if I changed it and I'm in the gym? Do they have the same rules in the gym? No. Okay. What's expected there? And they'll say things like running, you work as a team, be a good sport, respect the equipment, listen to the instructions. And I say, fantastic. So running is expected at the gym. It's not expected at the library. Does that mean running's a bad thing? And I get their brain thinking about it. And what I want them to get to think about this example is how expected behaviors change depending on where we are. Now, we can talk about different examples like the mall, the doctor's office, the airport, and a big one that I've been talking about is COVID-19. What a great language to use for explaining COVID-19. Expected behaviors are always changing with COVID-19. Sometimes we have to stay at home. Sometimes it's okay to go to a place as long as we wear a mask and we sanitize. And you know what? That's the beauty of expected behaviors. They change depending on where we are and what's going on. So we get their little brains to think about how different environments have different rules. And they're pretty good at catching this. But what we really want to make sure they understand is why we show expected behaviors. So I kind of get kids to think about it in this way. Let's pretend that we were in the library and you saw me across the room, and all of a sudden I start yelling and screaming, throwing all the books on the floor, ripping them, standing on the table. Yikes! How might you feel? I get some different responses for this. Some kids might say, I might go get a teacher. I might feel uncomfortable. I might not feel safe. I'd be really frustrated. I'd be upset. Some kids even tell me, yeah, I might laugh and because I think it's funny. And I said, okay, fantastic responses. Now, if you saw me acting this way in the library, would you be cool for me coming to your home? Would you trust me coming to your home and playing with your Xbox or your PlayStation or your iPad? And that's where kids go, oh, no. Why not? Well, it's hard to trust you. You just made a huge mess in the library. Totally. That's what expected behaviors are all about. How I act impacts how you think and feel about me. if you see that I'm showing a lot of unexpected behaviors, well, it's hard to trust. You might not feel respected. You might feel a little bit annoyed. And it doesn't even have to be something big like yelling and throwing books. It could be something like getting too close to someone and being in their personal bubble, especially with COVID-19. Chewing with your mouth open, picking your nose. These are things that can make other people feel uncomfortable, and it affects their relationship with you. So it's important to explain the why when it comes to expected behavior. It's important for me to show expected behavior because that's how I keep my friendships. That's how I keep my trust with adults, with my peers, and with the people around me. And this, my friends, is a great language to use when your child is A, going to a new place, or B, going to a place where they get super excited and their emotions might get the best of them. Kids know the expected behavior. They're great at this topic, but sometimes their emotions can get the best of them. So making sure that you introduce the topic and you talk about it before you go somewhere can really help regulate that. So, hey, we're going to Grandma's house. We haven't been there for a while because of COVID. What are some expected behaviors at Grandma's house? Hey, you know what just opened? This great amusement park, but we still want to be safe. So what are some expected behaviors there? And this is a great way to talk about it with your family and to get them ready before you go to a new event. Okay, so some points to think about when it comes to teaching expected behaviors. Well, will others think if I don't follow the expected behavior? We've talked about that a little bit. But what if it's my first time in a new place and I don't know the rules? So every house have different expected behaviors. Some people allow phones at the dinner table, some people don't. Some allow pets upstairs, some don't. So how can I know the rules? Well, we ask and we observe. We see what other people are doing. What if I spend time with someone else who shows unexpected behavior? So I'm doing all the right thing, but my friend keeps throwing garbage on the floor and gum on the floor. And what if a stranger saw that? What might they think of me if they didn't know me? Oh, they might think I'm going to do that. Or maybe I actually will because I'm spending so much time with them, it's going to end up feeling natural. So talking about how our friendships can impact us and why it's important not only for us to show expected behaviors, but to pick good friends who can show it. And the important one, what if I do something unexpected by accident? Because this will happen. Mistakes happen all the time. So what do I do? And that's where there's two important things. Number one, apologize. Number two, change your behavior. My favorite story to tell kids is the story of the muddy boots, and this really helps them understand what a good apology looks like. It goes pretty simple. If I came to your house wearing big muddy boots and I didn't take them off and I got your whole kitchen dirty, what would you say? Oh, Catherine, the whole kitchen's dirty. No, you're supposed to take your boots off. You made a huge mess. And I go, I'm so sorry. I did not know. I had no idea. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it. But I keep my boots on. And I go upstairs and now I get your room all muddy. What are you going to say? Kat, I already told you you're not supposed to be wearing muddy boots in the house. Please take them off. You're making a mess. Oh, right. I totally forgot. I'm so sorry. And I keep them on and get the whole rest of your house dirty. A good apology isn't just saying sorry. It's owning up and changing our actions. Yes, that is going to be hard. Yes, I might make a mistake. That's totally okay. But if I just say sorry empty and I don't follow through, it means nothing. If you do something unexpected, it's okay. We learn from our mistakes, we own up, we apologize, and we change our behavior. And that's important. So the next couple, we're getting into some more complex skills that we want to try to develop. So a really important one for friendship is empathy and perspective taking. We want kids to understand that sometimes, actually most of the time, there's no right or wrong way of doing something. There are occasions where yes, but there's also occasions where there could be a different perspective. One fun way to teach this is to use those different optical illusions and ask kids what they see. This is my favorite one, the duck rabbit one. So for some people they see a duck right away, for some they see a rabbit, and it was actually even created as a little great book that you can read to your child to help them kind of understand this. But I really like this because it helps them get their brain thinking. Yes, your eye might automatically see a duck. Totally okay. But it's also important to understand that other people are going to see a rabbit. It doesn't mean that your way is wrong or their way is right. It just means sometimes there's different views. Why is this important? It helps us learn. It helps us develop. It helps us take a perspective that we might not have thought of, and it helps us problem solve better. Yes, we're going to learn different things in our lives. And yes, maybe our family has specific expected behaviors and another family might have something different. That doesn't mean the other family is wrong or that we're right. It just means they have a different way of doing and seeing things, and that's okay. Teaching empathy means teaching your child to understand that there's always a different way to look at it, and that things aren't always going to be right, and there isn't always one way to do something. And it's important to start establishing this at a young age. So something as even simple as drawing a 6 and telling your child, what do you see? And they might say, I see a 6. And you're on the other side of the table and you say, I see a 9. And getting them to understand that there's always a different perspective. Other ways to really help instill this is reading lots of books, watching movies, stories, and videos, and talking about that. Like, how do you think this person felt? What do you think this person was going through? You know, when they did this, why do you think they did that? And getting them to see if they can put themselves in other people's shoes and learning and talking about this. This is a process, this takes time, and that's why those small steps are super duper important, and to use those everyday experience to talk about that. So, hey, what if someone went to school and they realized they forgot their lunch? How do you think that might affect their learning, right? So do you think that they're having a hard time focusing because they don't care or because they're hungry? And using those opportunities to discuss things that might impact us and looking beyond the surface level that we see. Fairness is another great topic to talk about, and this is a big one when it comes to siblings. Things aren't fair. Why does this person have this and I don't? Why does Bobby get to go here and I don't? And for a lot of kids who are quite rigid, this is a really hard thing to understand. So we want to slowly start teaching kids about fairness, and that fairness doesn't always mean that things are equal. Fairness means people get what they need. So here's a nice way to teach this. You can use some great visuals. So sit down at the dinner table and pull out, let's say there's you and your child, and pull out 4 apples. And say, if we had to share this and be fair, what would you do? And they'll typically say, well, you get 2 and I get 2. Awesome. And then if you have a sibling or parent, another parent around, you can add apples in order to make sure that it's fair when it's split up. Awesome. That's great. What if I told you you had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I haven't eaten anything all day? Does this still look fair to you? Ooh, that's a different question, is it? If the child says no, ask them, well, how come? Well, you didn't eat all day, so you're more hungry, versus I had 3 meals, so I'm not as hungry, so I think I'd be okay with 1 apple and you can get 3. Oh, thank you. If your child says, yes, it's still fair, maybe talk to them a little bit about that hunger. So if I haven't eaten all day, how hungry do you think it'd be? Pretty hungry. If you had 3 meals, how hungry do you think you'd be? Not so hungry. Do you think your body needs 2 apples, or do you think it would be okay with 1? Maybe you'd be okay with 1. What about my body? Do you think 1 apple will fill me up, or will I still get hungry? And if your child's the type of individual who gets really picky and says, oh yeah, well, the apple's so big, use things like blueberries, right? So get their, remove those logic little parts and just get them to think about the actual concept of it. This is a really great visual for them to understand fairness isn't always equal. And there's so many other great sayings. So the one where it talks about, you know, the fish and the monkey, if I gave both of them a tree and compared how well they can climb, well, obviously the fish would fail because it's not built for climbing a tree. And these are great stories and great ways to talk about fairness with your child and explaining that it's not always equal or the same thing. It's all about understanding what each person needs. Some people struggle with attention, they need a wiggle stool. Some people struggle with anxiety and they need to take a little bit of extra time to do something, and that's all okay. It helps when we take perspective taking to really reinforce what fairness can look like. The final topic that I want to talk about is passive, aggressive, and assertive. This is a more advanced topic, but you can honestly teach it as early as grade 4 or even grade 2. I've done this with kids as young as 7 years old. Sometimes they might not grasp the word itself, but they'll understand the meaning. So talking about what those look like and how they're important for solving problems. So sometimes when people have a problem, they get aggressive. Have you heard of that word before? What does it mean to be aggressive? For those of you who have kids in sport, they might mention something like, oh, they get rough and tough and they push and they shove, and you go, yeah, an aggressive person gets rough and tough. They're loud. They just say whatever they're thinking and they just want to get it out of the way. Do you think they're going to listen though? Nah, probably not. So an aggressive person is someone who cares about one person. Who do they care about? Themselves. Okay. What about passive? Passive might be a new word for you. Passive is the opposite. When someone is passive and they have a problem, oh, they don't want to upset anyone. They want to make sure everyone's happy even if their feelings are hurt. So they're going to stay quiet. They won't share. And it's almost like they're trying to be so nice, but then they end up feeling really sad. What's the problem with being too quiet and not sharing? What if someone asked them for their lunch every time and they always said yes because they didn't want to upset the person? What if someone asked them for money every time? Ooh, so talking about how sometimes passive people can get taken advantage of, or sometimes even their friends might get confused because they might not know what they want or what they need, and how it really holds in. And the last one is assertive. Well, assertive is like that perfect balance. So an aggressive person only cares about themselves. A passive person only cares about others, but they don't take care of themselves. Assertive cares about everyone. They listen, they're respectful, but they also share their opinion. And they make sure, even if they disagree with you, that they're still kind and they listen to your opinion. Which one of these do you think is the best? Assertive, of course. Is it always easy to be assertive? No. Our next slide talks about a little trick that you can help use to help build that assertiveness with you and your child. This is a wonderful skill. It's called an I message, and it was actually created in couples therapy because it was noticed that a lot of times when individuals had problems, they would say things like, "You're always late. You don't care about me. You never listen." And when you start a sentence with you, you're putting the blame on the other person, and it's really hard to listen when you feel attacked. So that's why I messages were created, to share how you're feeling in a respectful way. And we found out, hey, this isn't just great for adults, it's great for teenagers and kids. So here's a nice friendly way that you can teach this. It has 4 steps. First step, I feel. Pick a feeling and try to pick just one. I feel upset. I feel frustrated. I feel angry. If I pick lots of feelings, I feel upset and angry and frustrated and overwhelmed and underappreciated. Whew, it's hard to listen. We want to make sure our iMessage is short and clear. Okay, the person knows we're upset, but do they know why? No. That's where our second part comes in. We need to tell the person what they did, and we don't want to use judgmental language. We don't want to use vague language like you're mean, you're disrespectful, you bully me. We want to be specific. I feel upset when you broke my pencil. It's a pencil, Catherine. Why are you so upset over that? That's where the because comes in handy. Not everyone's going to understand why you're upset, and sometimes you have to explain it. I feel upset when you broke my pencil because my grandma gave that to me and I don't see her often. Oh, that's a very different message, isn't it? And the last one's a nice bonus. If this is a friend, if this is someone you care about, this is a great way to tell them what you expect from them. So can you please ask before you take my stuff? Can you please be a little bit more gentler around my things? And that's a really nice, clear, and easy way to give a message, be assertive, and be respectful. Kids are really great at learning this. Using it is a whole nother concept. So it's important that you practice this at home, practice it with someone he's comfortable with or she's comfortable with, and have visuals. A lot of time they'll say things and mumble up the order, and it'll sound like this. Well, I feel upset because you broke my pencil, because when you broke my pencil it made me feel upset, and then that was my grandma's pencil, and things get messy. We want our iMessage to be clear. So make sure you have a visual for them. Make sure that you are calm when you're practicing it with them, and they're calm too. Again, we want this iMessage to be assertive. If we're frustrated, it's not going to come out clear. And we also want to make sure the person that we're giving this iMessage to is ready to listen. If they're feeling frustrated, maybe I need some space and to try at a different time. It's important to teach your kid, just because you give an iMessage doesn't mean the person's always going to listen. At the end, we can only control one person, which is ourselves. And hey, if I was calm and I shared and I was polite and respectful and they said, I don't care, whatever, that's all that I can do. And maybe I just need to reduce the amount of time I'm spending with this person. A really great way to use iMessage too is as a compliment, because if we just hear negative things with people, they might not always want to listen. So a compliment is a great way to get them to practice iMessage in a comfortable manner. So hey, I feel really proud when you're learning with me because it shows me you're a great leader. Thank you. Mom, I feel super happy when you make my lunch because it makes me feel loved. Thank you. iMessages can be used for both a negative and positive situation, and it's a great way to add that into your vocabulary. And as a parent, it's great for you to use this with your kids once they've learned it, because they're going to notice when you use it, and that's going to be a sign, oh, mom and dad have to say something important. And that's a great way for them to maybe respond with an iMessage if they feel a different way too. Now, after we've spent some time, we've talked to our kids, they've learned these great things, we want to put it in practice. That's where those social skills interactions are super important. They don't have to be with friends, they could be with siblings. Even spending time with pets can help with empathy. But with COVID-19, we know there's also restrictions. So completing social skills online is still a great way for your child to learn. And yes, screen time might feel overwhelming, but if you're using it in a productive way and helping them build those relationships, it could be still used in a healthy manner. So have your child meet on Zoom with a friend and create a snack together from their kitchens. Play Pictionary, play online games, watch a movie. Even video games, as overwhelming as it may be, as long as you have a healthy time limit and they're able to talk to their friends, it's a great way for them to develop those conversation skills and those problem solving skills and to regulate emotions. And if you notice, oh, video game gets really overwhelming, that's when we start yelling and getting frustrated, bring up what you've already learned. So, hey, your voice kind of heated. Do you think that was passive, aggressive, or assertive? And have that conversation with them as well. I've provided a couple of links to some games that you can interact with online with friends, and there's also a couple more at the end of the slide. But just because your child isn't seeing someone in person doesn't mean that they can't practice those skills. So the next couple of slides have some different resources for you and your family. There's some websites, there are some books, and there are also some different group resources. And I'm not going to discuss all of them. The main one that I would like to focus is a little bit on group resources. So I'll go over to that next slide and talk a little bit about that. As we are approaching summer and we want to keep our kids engaged and getting them to build their social skills, there are different groups that are available through Calgary. So the first one that I'm going to guide you to is actually at Can Learn Society. We have a friend social skills group that is fully funded, and it is where a child meets one-on-one with a facilitator, and they go over all these different topics that I talked about and some different ones as well. So they meet for up to 10 sessions, and this is for kids grade 4 to 6, and I think we've recently opened up to some junior high. I have the email of our program coordinator at the end. Her name is Jamie. So if this is something you're interested in, please do email Jamie and see if you can get on our wait list. We also have a Calm Kids Happy Family group, which is targeted for parents, where it talks about developing these social skills. So if this is something you want to know a little bit more about, you can have a look at that. There is a little bit of funding for those families who might not be able to afford it, and that is some more information you can get on our website. There's other groups also available around Calgary, whether it's through Foothills Academy, Calgary Library. The City of Calgary actually released a great website with some free activities, or even the Growth with Trellis virtual program. So those are all done online. And with summer coming and your kids not being at school, this is a great way to still keep them engaged and building those social skills. So I highly recommend you have a look. A lot of these are free. Some of them might have a fee, and some of them might have changed because of COVID. So make sure you have a look at their website. But these are some great resources you can look at with you and your family. The rest of the slides, as I mentioned, talk a little bit more resources about websites, apps. There's some different games in there as well that you can go download on your iPad or your phone. And there's also my email and Jamie, our program coordinator's email. So if you had a specific question about social skills, please feel free to send me an email. And if you wanted to know more information about some of the programs we have available, Jamie is always here to listen, and you can feel free to send her an email as well. Thank you for sitting with me, and I hope that you learned a little bit of something. And I wanted to wish you the best throughout the summer, and as you and your child help develop these great social emotional learning as well. Take care.